SB4, the consequences of it are so extreme that the people being smuggled by the cartels, they will not want to be coming into the state of Texas.
Once again, it appears that the cruelty is, in fact, the point. That was the Texas Governor Greg Abbott on the immigration bill that he signed into law yesterday. It would permit Texas law enforcement to arrest anyone who enters from a foreign country without authorization. Courts have ruled again and again that only the federal government can enforce immigration laws, but this appears to be more about Abbott's continuing efforts to use asylum seekers to score political points than an attempt to actually legislate anything. NBC News reporting that Abbott previously ordered the installation of a 1,000-foot floating barrier near Eagle Pass, Texas, and for the placement of razor wire near the Rio Grande to stop migrants from entering the state after crossing the river from Mexico. Both of those efforts were rejected in court, and it remains to be seen if the courts are going to allow this law to stand. One city in Texas, El Paso, has already sued to stop the law, and yesterday, congressional Democrats sent a letter to the Department of Justice urging them to intervene, calling it, quote, the most extreme anti-immigrant state bill in the United States. I want to bring in Democratic member of the Texas House of Representatives, Victoria Nieve Criado, and Deputy Legal Director for the American Immigration Council, Emma Winger. Thanks to both of you for being here. Representative Criado, let me start with you on this law. What's the issue that you have with it, and what would you like to see done instead?
Thank you so much for having me. The fact is that this bill is so extreme and unconstitutional, violating the preemption clause and many other components of our Constitution. It essentially allows police to question even American citizens about our citizenship in with respect to immigration law. That is something that falls within the purview of the federal government. What Texas and Republicans are trying to do is test the Arizona versus United States case, given the new makeup of the Supreme Court. We saw the Supreme Court overturn Roe v. Wade, and now they're wanting to see the Arizona case overturned. It's testing how far a state can go to enforce immigration law. It's extreme. It pits neighbor against neighbor, and it's going to result in mass incarceration and racial profiling all across our state.
Emma, and I was going to ask that question about the Arizona versus the United States, because we've seen this kind of thing in Arizona. What's the legal question at hand here? What's the important thing that we need to be thinking about?
Well, Texas here is claiming that it has power to operate in not just one, but two areas that our Constitution and the Supreme Court say are clearly the sole responsibility of the federal government. That is immigration enforcement and foreign affairs. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a decision named after Arizona, said very clearly that immigration enforcement cannot be handled by the states. It must be handled by the federal government. And absolutely, the representative is right that it's clear that Governor Abbott is going after Arizona. But I think it's important to remember a couple things. Yes, there have been changes in the makeup of the Supreme Court, but not in the text of our Constitution. There are good reasons why these areas are left solely to the federal government. And that the Arizona decision is not a one-off, and it's not a standalone decision. It is built on many Supreme Court cases, making it clear that these areas are solely the responsible of the federal government. And again, not just immigration, but foreign affairs, which are directly implicated by immigration law, and I think are really illustrated in this particular statute.
Representative Criado, one of the difficulties with this conversation is because there's been a conflation of our immigration needs, requirements, and policies in the United States with a sort of a Donald Trump-fueled conversation about the southern border. As a Texas state representative, I think we can all acknowledge that there are improvements that can be made on the border, but what do they look like in a way in which cruelty is not the point, in a way in which American citizens are not subject to potentially unlawful search and inquiry, in a way that doesn't seem to be pitting, as you said, neighbor after neighbor? What does success look like to you? Because I think everybody in Texas realizes some things have to change.
Right. And I chair the Mexican American Legislative Caucus. We are the largest and oldest Latino caucus in the country. And our members have put forth numerous solutions to address the issues on the border, from looking at transportation infrastructure, from looking at technology solutions that can be looking at funding that can be given to the humanitarian organizations that have significant needs on the border. There are other solutions. This goes far beyond. We've already seen, for example, also pregnant moms being trapped in barbed wire, having a miscarriage. We've seen children being pushed in the river. These are not the types of policies that a state should be able to implement. And so that's why, we've been fighting tooth and nail against these attacks by Governor Abbott.
And may I ask you, you said there are, speaking about the Arizona case, that it was where this was adjudicated, and you said it wasn't just Arizona specific, it relied on law in which there are good reasons why immigration enforcement in America is the domain of the federal government. Without this being a PhD law class, how can you help us understand what some of those basic underpinnings of those good reasons are?
Sure. And I'm gonna begin with the foreign affairs angle here, because one of the things that is remarkable about this law, in addition to the fact that it all the harms that the representative just outlined, is that it mandates that Texas magistrate judges order everyone convicted of this law deported, order that they leave the United States. But Mexico, just like the United States, gets to decide who comes into its country. Mexico has already voiced its opposition to the law, already expressed that they may challenge it. So what you have here is a potential showdown between Texas authorities and Mexican authorities at ports of entry. And here we have Governor Abbott interfering with an important, complicated international relationship, right? Mexico negotiates with our federal government, not individual states. And this sort of law, Abbott's looking to blow up that central relationship. And then on the immigration angle, right, there are aspects of this law that ask now Texas authorities, Texas Rangers, police officers to make complicated immigration determinations, right? Whether someone is lawfully present, that's part of this case, this statute, is a complicated question. Whether or not someone is a citizen is a complicated question. Someone might be born abroad and have automatically gotten citizenship through their parents. Even the federal government occasionally wrongfully deports U.S. citizens. So it's frightening to think about what a local Texas police officer might be able to do. These are issues for which the government is trained and is really the only institution suited to handle.